My gala was a masterpiece, glittering with the city's elite and crystal chandeliers. Until the lights went out, the doors slammed shut, and I realized my perfect event was actually a trap, sprung by the quietest guest in the room. The crystal chandeliers of the grand ballroom were my pride and joy. Each one dripping with 1,000 meticulously polished prisms cast a warm, golden glow over the city's elite. I'm an event planner, and tonight was supposed to be my masterpiece, the Children's Hope Foundation annual gala. This wasn't just another charity dinner, this was the event of the season. We had senators, tech billionaires, and old money matriarchs whose names were etched onto the city's hospital wings and university libraries. The air hummed with the gentle clinking of champagne flutes and the low murmur of million-dollar deals being brokered over hors d'oeuvres. Everything was perfect. My timeline was flawless, the catering was divine, and my team moved with the silent efficiency of a special ops unit. Then Mr. Alistair Finch arrived. He wasn't just another guest. He was the guest of honor, though few people knew it yet. Finch was the CEO of Finch Innovations, a tech giant that had exploded onto the scene a few years ago. He was young, brilliant, and had just anonymously donated a staggering 8-figure sum to the foundation, enough to fund their entire operational budget for the next 5 years. He'd requested no fanfare, but we'd placed him at the head VIP table, table number 1, as a quiet acknowledgement of his generosity. I watched him from across the room as he was seated. He moved with an understated confidence that commanded more attention than the flashiest billionaire in the room. His suit was immaculately tailored, his smile was genuine, and he greeted the other guests at his table with a quiet, respectful grace. I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. This was going perfectly. That's when I saw the storm cloud approaching, and its name was Mr. Harrington. Harold Harrington was old money personified. His family had practically built this city, and he never let anyone forget it. He was large, ruddy-faced, and carried himself with an air of entitlement so thick you could choke on it. For the last 20 years, he had been the foundation's largest public donor, and for 20 years, he had occupied the center seat at table number 1. Tonight, that seat belonged to Mr. Finch. I started moving before Harrington was even halfway across the room, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was the one variable I hadn't accounted for. Pure, uncut arrogance. "Excuse me," Harrington boomed, his voice cutting through the sophisticated chatter. Heads turned. "I believe you're in my seat." Mr. Finch looked up from his conversation, his expression calm. "Pardon me?" "My seat," Harrington repeated, gesturing impatiently at the chair. "You're in it. This is my table. It's always been my table." Mr. Finch glanced down at the elegant place card in front of him. "The card says Finch. I'm Alistair Finch. I believe I'm in the right place." By now I had reached the table, my professional smile plastered on my face. "Mr. Harrington, so good to see you. There seems to be a slight mix-up. We actually have you seated at table 2 this evening, right next to the senator." I tried to make it sound like an upgrade. Harrington didn't even look at me. His eyes were locked on Mr. Finch, narrowed with a disgust that was utterly chilling. "I don't care what the little girl with the clipboard says. I sit here. Get up." The silence that fell over the table was deafening. Mr. Finch didn't move. He simply held Harrington's gaze. "I was invited to sit at this table," he said, his voice low and even, "and I will not be spoken to in that manner." That was it. That was the spark. Harrington's face turned a shade of purple I had only ever seen in cartoons. He snapped his fingers, a shockingly crude gesture in a room this opulent. "Security, get this person out of my seat." 2 of the venue's security guards, men I'd known for years, approached cautiously. They looked at me, then at Harrington, then at the calmly seated Mr. Finch. They were confused. "Sir, is there a problem?" one of them asked. "The problem," Harrington spat, "is that this man is trespassing. He is refusing to vacate my property." "Sir, this isn't your property, and Mr. Finch is an invited guest," I interjected, my voice trembling slightly. "Mr. Finch is our guest of honor." Harrington laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Guest of honor? Don't be ridiculous. Remove him. Now." The guards looked torn. Harrington was a powerful man, a man who could get them fired with a single phone call. I saw the decision flicker in their eyes. They chose their paychecks. One of them put a hand on Mr. Finch's shoulder. "Sir, please, let's not make a scene." Mr. Finch slowly placed his napkin on the table. He looked at the guard's hand on his expensive suit, then back at the guard's face. He didn't resist. He didn't raise his voice. He simply allowed them to pull him to his feet. But it wasn't a polite escort. Harrington was still fuming, and he barked, "I said, drag him out!" Spurred by the venom in his voice, the guards tightened their grip, pulling Mr. Finch unceremoniously from the table. The leg of his chair scraped loudly against the marble floor, a sound that echoed through the now dead-silent ballroom. Every eye was on them. Every phone was out, recording. As they manhandled him toward the exit, Mr. Finch stopped for a fraction of a second. He straightened his suit jacket, smoothed it down with an unnerving calm, and looked back. Not at the gawking crowd, not at me, but directly at Harold Harrington, who was now triumphantly settling into the vacated seat. Mr. Finch didn't say a word. He just gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. It wasn't a nod of defeat. It was a nod of confirmation. Then he was gone. The entire incident took less than 90 seconds. Harrington was preening. The room was buzzing with scandalized whispers. My career was flashing before my eyes. I was about to rush to the podium to try and salvage the night when it happened. The magnificent crystal chandeliers above us flickered once, twice. Then, one by one, with a series of soft, decisive clicks, they went dark. The entire grand ballroom was plunged into absolute blackness. A collective gasp, followed by panicked murmurs, filled the void. Before the full-blown chaos could erupt, the emergency lights kicked on, casting the room in a cold, sterile, red glow. And in that eerie light, the grand oak doors at the main entrance were thrown open with a force that made them slam against the walls. Standing in the doorway were not hotel staff or police officers. They were a dozen figures in stark, dark suits with earpieces, their silhouettes framed by the hallway lights. They moved with a chilling, synchronized purpose. One man, clearly in charge, stepped forward. His voice, amplified by the cavernous silence, was devoid of any emotion. It wasn't a request. It was a decree. This event is over. By order of the Federal Reserve, this entire venue is now under lockdown. No one leaves. The air, once thick with perfume and champagne, was now heavy with fear. A collective paralysis had seized the city's most powerful people. They were frozen in the eerie red twilight, their diamonds and silks looking garish and cheap under the emergency strobes. My clipboard felt like a lead weight in my hand, its meticulously planned timeline now a piece of useless fiction. The men in suits spread out through the room with a practiced, predatory calm. They didn't shout. They didn't threaten. They simply moved to every exit, their presence a silent, impenetrable wall. All electronic devices, place them on the nearest table. Now, the leader's amplified voice commanded. There was a frantic scramble as people fumbled for their phones, the source of their power and connection, suddenly rendered useless. I watched a tech billionaire, a man who probably owned the company that made the phone, place his device on a white tablecloth as if it were a bomb. My mind was a whirlwind of catastrophic scenarios. A terror threat? A hostage situation? But it didn't feel like that. This was too clean, too organized. It felt like a liquidation. Then the leader started walking. He didn't look at the senator or the socialites clutching their pearls. He walked with a singular purpose, his polished shoes making no sound on the plush carpet, straight towards table 1, straight towards Harold Harrington. Harrington, who had been basking in his victory just moments before, was now on his feet, his face a mottled patchwork of fury and confusion. "What is the meaning of this?" "I am Harold Harrington. I demand to know who's in charge." The leader stopped directly in front of him. He was a decade younger than Harrington and half his size, but he radiated an authority that made the old man seem small and frail. "We know exactly who you are, Mr. Harrington," the man said, his voice now at a conversational level, yet it carried through the silent room. "My name is Agent Thorne, Federal Reserve Enforcement Division. We've been monitoring the transactions of Sterling Harrington Trust for 18 months. The name of the bank hung in the air like poison gas. It was Harrington's Bank, the financial bedrock of his family's empire. I saw a flicker of genuine panic in Harrington's eyes before he masked it with bluster. "This is outrageous. A misunderstanding. My lawyers will have your badges for this." Agent Thorne didn't even blink. He slid a thin tablet onto the table, its screen glowing in the dim light. "There is no misunderstanding. At 8:47 p.m., your chief financial officer initiated a massive, unscheduled wire transfer to an offshore account. An act of financial desperation we've been waiting for. It was the final marker. As of 9 p.m., Sterling Harrington Trust was declared insolvent. Its assets are being frozen as we speak." A wave of gasps rippled through the room. Sterling Harrington wasn't just Harrington's bank. It was the bank for half the people in this room. Their businesses, their trusts, their foundations, including the Children's Hope Foundation. My masterpiece event was being held in the middle of a financial apocalypse. And then, like a key turning in a lock, everything clicked into place. Finch Innovations. I'd done my research when the donation came through. They weren't a flashy social media company. They specialized in next-generation cybersecurity and forensic accounting software. Their main clients weren't individuals. They were governments and global financial institutions. And Mr. Finch's calm, his lack of surprise, the nod. Oh God, the nod. It wasn't confirmation. It was a signal. He wasn't the victim of the scene Harrington had made. He was the architect of it. Harrington's racist, arrogant display wasn't the cause of his downfall. It was merely the final, ugly symptom of a corruption Mr. Finch was already there to excise. He had baited him. He had sat in that chair knowing exactly what would happen, and he used Harrington's own prejudice to spring the trap. Agent Thorne gestured to his men, who began moving toward the table. "We'll be seizing all personal assets on site that are tied to the bank, pending review. Wallets, watches, jewelry." Harrington sputtered, aghast. "You can't do this. This is my gala. I am the primary benefactor here." Agent Thorne almost smiled. It was a cold, sharp thing. "No, you're not," he said softly. "You see, we were given our final access to your encrypted servers by the Foundation's largest donor, a man who gave 5 times your highest ever contribution just to get a seat at your table tonight. A man who, it turns out, is also the Federal Reserve's lead independent consultant on precisely this kind of white-collar crime." Thorne leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that everyone in the room strained to hear. "He wanted to be here to see this himself, but you had him removed. So allow me to pass on a message from Mr. Alistair Finch. He says, checkmate." The word checkmate hung in the dead air of the ballroom. It wasn't just a message. It was a verdict. Harold Harrington seemed to shrink, the bluster and arrogance finally draining from his face, leaving behind the hollow-eyed look of a man who had just watched his entire world vanish. The 2 guards who had dragged Mr. Finch out were now standing stiffly against a wall, their faces pale, looking as if they'd rather be anywhere else on earth. Agent Thorne didn't wait for a response. He and his team moved with ruthless efficiency. They weren't just securing a room, they were dismantling an empire. Agents calmly approached guests, cross-referencing names on a list. Those whose finances were deeply entangled with Sterling Harrington were quietly escorted into an adjoining salon for processing. It was a surreal sight. Women in designer gowns having their heirloom diamond necklaces unclasped and placed into evidence bags. Men in bespoke tuxedos handing over $1,000 watches with trembling hands. The Foundation's gala had become a federal seizure operation. My own knees felt weak. The Children's Hope Foundation, our funding. Was it all gone? Had Mr. Finch's massive donation been a Trojan horse, delivered only to be snatched away once the city was breached? I felt a wave of nausea. As if sensing my panic, a new figure stepped out of the shadows near the entrance. It was Mr. Finch. He'd changed out of his dinner jacket and now wore a simple, dark cashmere sweater. He looked completely at ease, as if he were observing a complex but predictable experiment. He wasn't flanked by federal agents, but he held an authority that surpassed everyone in the room. He walked over to me, his expression unreadable. "A bit more eventful than you planned, I imagine," he said, his voice a calm island in the sea of quiet chaos. "Mr. Finch," I stammered. "The foundation. The donation." He gave a small, reassuring smile. "The foundation is safe. The donation was made from a private, firewalled account. It was never touched by Sterling Harrington. In fact," he added, glancing over at the chaos, "it's probably the only clean money in this room tonight." Relief washed over me so intensely I felt lightheaded. He had protected the children. This whole terrifying ordeal wasn't about destroying the foundation, but saving it from the corruption it had unknowingly been propped up by. He then turned his gaze to Harrington, who was now sitting numbly at table 1, his empire reduced to a single chair. Mr. Finch walked over, not with triumph, but with a kind of weary finality. Agent Thorne nodded respectfully and stepped back, giving them space. "You know, Harold," Mr. Finch began, his voice soft, "my father worked as a janitor in one of your bank's downtown branches for 30 years. He saved every extra dollar he earned and invested it in a Sterling Harrington retirement fund. He trusted you. He believed in the Harrington name." Harrington looked up, his eyes glassy and uncomprehending. "When your bank collapsed in '08 because of your creative accounting," Mr. Finch continued, "my father lost everything. He died 2 years later, a broken man. He always told me that men like you lived in a different world, with different rules. He was right, so I decided to learn the rules of your world. Not to join it, but to master it. I built my company to find men like you, men who hide behind their names and their charities while they bleed the common person dry." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Tonight wasn't just about justice for the Federal Reserve. It was about a debt being paid. You didn't just drag a black CEO from your table. You dragged away the son of the janitor whose life you ruined. The final piece of the puzzle slotted into place. This wasn't business. This was personal. A lifetime of quiet, focused, brilliant vengeance culminating in a single, devastating night. Mr. Finch turned and walked away from the broken man at the table. He came back to me. "When this is all over," he said, handing me a sleek, black business card, "the foundation will need to restructure its board. I have some suggestions. And you," he added, with the first genuine warm smile I'd seen from him all night, "did an excellent job tonight under extreme circumstances. My personal foundation is hosting its own gala next spring. I'd like you to plan it." Then he was gone, melting back into the shadows as discreetly as he had arrived. The red emergency light still bathed the room, but the color no longer felt like a warning. It felt like a dawn. The old, corrupt world had been shut down, and in its place something new, something far more just, was about to be built, and I, the girl with the clipboard, was somehow going to be a part of it. The grand ballroom was dark and in disarray, but for the first time all night I felt a flicker of hope, brighter than any crystal chandelier.